Welcome to the Therapist HQ, your weekly pep talk for private practice pros. Let's dive in.
Today's episode is brought to you by Powbox. Here's a question that I have for you. How many extra steps does your current email setup add for the people that you're emailing? If the answer involves a portal, a separate password, or a click here to view your secure message link, there is a simpler way. Powbox encrypts everything automatically on the back end, so what lands in someone's inbox looks just like an email. Normal, easy, still fully HIPAA compliant. I made the switch in my own practice, and the difference wasn't in what I had to learn. It was in what I had to stop dealing with. If you want the deal that I have exclusively for our listeners to start with Powbox, be sure to check the show notes. Welcome back to the Therapist HQ podcast, your weekly private practice pep talk. I'm Alicia Murray, and this week I am so fortunate to be joined by Aubrey Richardson. She is a licensed professional counselor in Texas with a deep commitment to caring for those who care for everyone else. She holds a degree in clinical mental health counseling from Johns Hopkins University and has worked across the full spectrum of psychiatric care. After witnessing the long-term effects of burnout and vicarious trauma on fellow clinicians and caregivers, Aubrey opened her private practice, Sage Holistic Counseling, where she now specializes in working with therapists, helpers, and caregivers who are navigating soul-deep exhaustion and burnout. Her work focuses on dismantling hustle culture, as well as bringing a trauma-informed systemic approach to burnout recovery for those in care-based professions. Outside of her practice, Aubrey is deeply invested in her community, serving on the Alliance Board for Genesis Women's Shelter, and as an active member of a junior league of Dallas. When she's not giving back, you'll find her lost in a horror novel, sweating through a hot yoga class, or spending quality time with her 2 rescue dogs. Aubrey, oh my gosh, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
So excited to have you. And before we started recording, I had mentioned that I was just peeping through your website, and I was truly inspired because the way that you're able to speak to helping professionals and high functioning folks is truly incredible. And so I just know going into this that there are going to be so many nuggets that you're able to share with us just about what does self-care and how do we really overcome burnout, like these 2 really big buzzwords, I think, in our profession, and what we can really practically do about them. So I'm very excited to get into all of this.
Me too. I am ready to yap it up.
That's what I like to hear. So starting from the beginning, you opened up your practice, Sage Holistic Counseling, after watching the burnout and vicarious trauma taking its toll on the clinicians around you. Was there ever a specific moment or a story that made you say, like, this is enough and I have to build something or do something different?
Absolutely. So I was actually working in a hospital in Texas when COVID hit. So at the time, I was working as the director of an IOP as an associate level clinician. And as an associate does, you just are trying to get as many hours as you can. So I was also working partial hospitalization, inpatient, like anywhere they would let me work, I would be there. And so I saw firsthand how folks were affected by COVID. And again, as an associate hustling for hours, I also had a second job at a private practice. And all of these medical professionals started coming into therapy. This practice was right down the street from the hospital. And the intake coordinator was like, do you know who really understands what these folks are going through right now? Aubrey, because she's on the inpatient psych unit, like with these folks right now. And so I really started to be with the helpers and the healers and saw just how crispy burnt folks really were. And I fell into this niche and I loved it. And I kept working for this private practice and I got really burnt out myself. I started Sage Holistic Counseling after I had this conversation with my supervisor where I was like, I'm trying to have these conversations with people about taking care of themselves and I can't do it anymore, like because I am unwell. I was seeing up to 38 clients a week. I know. The face you just made is crazy. Wow. I was in the middle of a separation. I was working from home in my bedroom in like one corner in a chair. And I said, I can't do this. I'm unwell. I need to see less clients. I need help. And my supervisor looked at me and she said, everyone else can do it. Why can't you? And I said, heard, understood. No one is going to take care of me in the way that I'm going to, in the way that I need. And so within 3 months, I had filed for divorce, quit my job, started my practice, and moved into a house by myself for the first time. So I am no stranger to burnout and like what it means to really have to practice what it is that you talk about all day long.
I love all the context behind that and just painting a full picture of you're so deep inside of stuff. Sometimes it's hard to pick your head up and look around and be like, oh, wait a minute, this is actually a horrible situation. And,
Actually,
I'm crumbling.
This is a disaster. And I can't keep talking to folks about taking care of themselves when like I'm not doing it.
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like your work with folks has changed since you got yourself into this different situation, which it sounds like you're in a lovely situation now with your work and your time outside of work? Do you feel like your work with clients has changed throughout that process?
Absolutely. I am pretty transparent with my clients when we start to talk about this, that you cannot heal in the environments that are hurting you. And that's really difficult to have this, I love that word that you use, reckoning of either having to change the environment or leave it.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what that's like. I know how hard it is to feel like you have to set your life on fire sometimes to make this big dramatic change. But I also know what it's like to just do these little changes over time that make a huge impact too. I learn as much from my clients as I hope that I can give them as well.
I think we all have that hope.
It's just keeping my fingers crossed.
Yes, every day. Yeah. And, I both love and hate that you have called it a soul deep or soul crushing exhaustion. How do you feel like that is maybe different or just even like a way to explain the burnout that is specific to therapists, right? Because I think a therapist burnout is different than in other fields or professions or things that people are involved in because we are so people oriented and people centered. How do you feel like that's different?
I think because we are so other oriented, therapists are so, in my experience, bad at recognizing burnout in the early stages. Though we don't even call it burnout until we're at this level of exhaustion and fatigue. It is permeating every part of our life. It has affected every relationship. It is coloring how we see everything. And that's when we're like, oh, I think I'm burned out. And to me, that is because burnout is a systemic level of emotional neglect. And most therapists are so used to that emotional neglect that we don't even recognize that it's a problem until we are so deep into it.
I totally agree. I think we're really good at putting a face on about it and just kind of carrying through and pushing through because I think we know what we should be doing and should be feeling and should be helping ourselves with. But it's like you said, that practicality of it, of implementing those things is easy to forego.
What I love about working with therapists is that we share the same knowledge base. Like I don't have some sort of magical knowledge that another therapist doesn't have. And so it's really about like what is getting in the way. So what is it about, this pattern of how you've learned to walk around in the world that this systemic neglect you're experiencing within a system you're in feels so familiar maybe to the emotional neglect you felt in other parts of your life, that you are so used to being like that your needs are not important, that you're dismissed and ignored, and that you have to be the one that is doing all the things and solving all of the problems. Like that's probably not just happening at work. Like where else are you doing that? And where did you learn that? And it tends to be from, early childhood experiences, family of origin stuff.
Do you find that people maybe have a hard time like betting on themselves to go into private practice or feel like they'll be successful in private practice when they have these patterns behind them of staying in these situations and sort of being the catch-all person for everything? Like that feels very community mental health typical based, like in my mind. And I think paired with my experiences that I've had.
In my experience, it doesn't necessarily stop folks from getting into a private practice situation. But what happens is that you just rebuild the same practice that you were trying to get away from.
So true.
I know that when I started my practice initially, I filled up my schedule just like I did at this old practice because that's how I was trained, right? Like that's how I taught. Fill up your practice, account for cancellations, push yourself to get this full schedule. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, this is what wasn't working in the first place. Like, why would I do this again? And you don't even realize the patterns that you're recreating until someone else kind of lovingly and gently says like, hey, this feels familiar.
And not everybody, I think, has those loving people. And I think, like you're saying, it takes us so long sometimes to come to the other side and be like, hey, we're actually in like the same sort of shitstorm that we were in before, but this one is actually within our control and we can fix it. Like we created it, but we can also undo it and back it up a little and fix it, which is great.
Yes. One of my favorite things to tell folks who have their own practice is that you are both the problem and the solution.
So true.
Like you created this problem and you will also create the solution.
Yes. Yes. Great responsibility to have.
Yeah, I love it. It's incredible. I wouldn't have it any other way, but frequently I'm like, oh, I did this to myself. Like,
where is the person to blame? It is me. It's very unfortunate.
Sometimes I'm like, wow, my boss is the worst. And I'm like, yep, it's me. It's me.
So true though. And I think that like leaning into that control of like, if you've gotten yourself into a situation in your practice, like you can undo it and it's uncomfortable and it's probably difficult conversations and difficult boundaries to put up, but we can walk it back and restructure
Absolutely.
things.
Absolutely. Nothing is so permanent that you can't shift it, redo it, make a different choice.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I'm dying to hear, what are your thoughts on these sort of surface level self-care tips for therapists of have better boundaries, have more time for self-care, organize yourself better? What are your takes on that? And where do we find what actually prevents the burnout?
I'm just going to like roll my eyes so hard. Everything is this like very buzzy, like self-care, self-care, self-care. And I am so sick of it. Talking about self-care as if it was like the end all be all, the definitive solution. Burnout is not an individual problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are trying to approach it with an individual solution, it's never going to get better. Burnout is what happens when the system is demanding too much of you and you are not getting enough in. You're not getting enough back. Burnout, it's truly like an epidemic. It is a public health issue. It is a polite way of saying like worker exploitation. When we really call it what it is, like a bubble bath is not going to fix worker exploitation. And so often the self-care that we see is literally being sold to us. And it's like this treat yourself, buy the bubble bath, buy the massage, like go on vacation. And while those things can be really lovely and supportive and do have a place, the best self-care cannot be bought. And frequently, what is being sold to us as self-care, the people who are selling it are also the ones who are benefiting from us burning out in the first place.
It's actually so crazy to think about the consumerism that is built in and baked into these higher level systemic issues of exploiting the employees, like you're saying, and like having people in these situations where they are overworking and overproducing and overdoing it in every aspect and leading to burnout. And then if that's not enough, then we're also going to monetize the perceived solution of it.
And if it's an individual problem and you are not fixing your own burnout, like, well, I guess you're just not doing your self-care very well either. Like you need to work better on that. And it just absolves all of the true culprits, like of any responsibility.
What would you say to therapists who maybe feel like they might be in this position, but aren't sure exactly how to identify it? And I think this goes into too, where you said it takes therapists until we're in like the final stages to recognize it, right? Like how can we as therapists back ourselves up a little bit and try to recognize these things a little sooner?
When therapists ask me this question, when I talk about it with clients, it's always this moment of like, oh, I wish you had a different answer, Aubrey. And like, sorry, I don't. Like, you're not going to like my answer. And like, it's fine. We have to start practicing noticing things early.
Mm-hmm.
And the word that I use for that is mindfulness. We have to start noticing what we are feeling as we're feeling it and noticing what we're thinking as we're thinking it. We have to start recognizing the signals that our body is telling us sooner rather than later. We have to get really honest about like, what is the problem? Because if we don't know what the scope of the problem is, what is really going on, we can't fix it. And so we have to start collecting some really good data about what is actually happening. How does your body respond when a client asks you to schedule outside of, your usual hours? What happens internally when you look at your calendar? How does your body respond when you look at your calendar and you see white space, right? Like these are the questions we have to start really asking ourselves, because frequently, in my experience, the answer is rarely like we need to be doing something more. We truly need to be doing less. Like we don't need to learn another skill. We need to start practicing the things that we already know to be true.
I think it's so hard for therapists to specifically to back up in that way and to back off of things, because I'm sure you see it throughout social media and Facebook groups. Therapists are like, what more can I be doing? What more can I be adding and doing? And I think that they're just on like a freeway to burning out with like all of these additions that they're trying to make. And like you said, not really looking at, well, what is working, what isn't working, and what can I let go of in the process of potentially adding different things in.
Yeah, we only have so much time, energy, and capacity. And that's a really hard conversation to have with folks, like who want to do it all and who want to be all the things and who want to help all the people. And like, you are only one person and you cannot be the human glue that is fixing all of these problems and like putting all of these pieces together. And that's a hard conversation because we want to do so much and, we're only human.
And going back to what you said about listening to our body, about how we feel when we're looking at our calendar or looking at all these different parts, especially in private practice, of how our practice is set up and running day to day, you would not believe, or you probably could believe actually, the work that I do with therapists on creating their schedule. And I'm like, you're going to fill in your personal things first. Like you're going to fill in your meal times. You're going to fill in pickup and drop offs from school. And do you have a day that you can have lunch with your partner? And they're like, well, no, I have to work from 9 to 3. But we don't have to do that. We don't have to follow that schedule. And every time, I don't know, it surprises me every time, even though it shouldn't, because I'm just like, we get to choose now, But like you said, we so naturally go back to like, I see kids, so I have to work from 4 to 9 p.m. Or I see adults, I have to work from 8 to 4 or 9 to 3 or whatever the case may be. And that's the black and white answer. And it's like, well, let's throw in your favorite workout class. Like, let's go to the 1 p.m. class so it's not so full. Like, what a treat,
My gosh. One of the first questions that I actually ask folks is like, what does your life look like outside of work? Like, you are a therapist, but you are actually so much more. Like, you're actually a full person. And work is probably the least interesting thing about you.
Yeah.
So what does your life look like when you're not working? What are you doing for joy and for movement and nourishment and connection? And we rarely pause to even explore like, what role does work play in our life? Because so many therapists that I work with will do all like the things, right? Like they'll follow the to-do list to like set up their schedule. And then again, we see this free space and we actually have a moment to like feel things, think about things. And we're like, no, I hate that. Like, I don't want to feel, I don't want to think. Yeah. Hate. And then we're like, you know what will help me not think about things? Focusing on other people's problems. Absolutely. I'll put somebody right in that schedule, right in that spot. If we are so busy with other people, we don't have to think about ourselves. We don't have to think about our own life.
I mean, yeah. And in private practice, we have the ability to do so. So like you said, we're in control, and then we're also in control of the consequences of our behaviors.
We are the problem and we are the solution. And for a lot of my clients, when we look at their schedules and we're like, oh my God, can you please just like have a lunch break? For the love, like just put in a lunch break. I will tell folks, don't just write lunch break, because when you look at your schedule, you can move that so easily, like boop, gone. But if you actually get really specific about like, why is this important to you? If you write like, I want to be nourished, or like, I don't want to bite, my partner's head off at 4 p.m. because I haven't had, any snacks or any water, like that becomes so much more true and real and harder to ignore than lunch break.
The purpose behind what you're blocking.
Yeah, like if you're going to block off yoga at 1 p.m., you're like, oh, well, there's a 6:30 class that I can go to. No, 1 p.m., I like the instructor more, and I can always get my favorite spot, and there's no traffic. This is what we put on our calendar to remind ourselves, like, this is why I'm doing it. You don't have to just sort of like rely on that willpower all the time of I put it on there and I hope I remember to keep it there.
I imagine that you probably do a lot of inventory taking. I do with folks in different capacities, obviously, because I'm not working with them in the therapeutic lens, but more so in the business coaching lens. But I imagine therapeutically, it also still serves value of taking stock of their values and taking stock of their goals. And based on this kind of caricature of therapists that are prone to this burnout, it's not something that they're often doing or practicing. And I think it gets a little uncomfortable looking at, well, what is important to me? Like, what even is that? And how do I even begin to identify what are these pieces of my day and my week that actually bring value to me.
Well, and what do I say is important to me versus what am I actually doing? These are two different things. I can say my family is really important to me, but if I look at your calendar, am I going to see that reflected?
Yeah.
And that's a very different conversation. And, I think therapy, part of my job and like part of what I'm really good at is to be like, yeah, we have to have some uncomfortable conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have some uncomfortable conversations with yourself because you've been working really hard to not have those. And that's our
Yeah.
job in therapy, right? Is to pause and be like, what are we doing? Where is this coming from? Is this even still serving you? This over functioning and doing too much, that's not like a cute personality trait. That's a learned trauma response of like, my life is in chaos and I have to manage it.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to live from that place for a really long time. Oh, and really grieving that you've had to do that and that you've been so busy and like, what did you have to miss and what did you have to sacrifice? Working, I was seeing 38 clients a week. I missed a lot.
Yeah, I imagine. And that's only the client facing work. That's not even the rest that goes along with it.
Absolutely.
Do you ever find that you come across therapists or professionals in general who almost have this sort of like innate comfort in the chaos because it's all they've ever known?
Absolutely. We thrive. Like we thrive in this chaos. We have been practicing since we were tiny little humans what it means to walk into a room and be hyper attuned to everyone's emotions. And to be hyper attuned to like small shifts in people's face and mannerisms to anticipate, emotional responses, to anticipate threats and neutralize them before they even happen. And all of those traits keep us really safe from whether like emotional chaos, physical chaos, and they also translate really well into being a therapist. Those are skills that we have been honing for a very long time.
And it's a skill that we unfortunately are using in a bit of a counterproductive way when it comes to ourselves, because I think that some therapists can think that they can sustain what's going on because they see the end goal of like, well, I have to provide for myself. I have to provide for my family. I have to keep my practice afloat or maintain my job at this agency. But then I think when it comes down to it, it's like, well, is this truly sustainable? Like, what does that look like at the end? And what are you willing to risk in order to sustain?
I want therapists to have as long of a career as they want. And right now, if we look at the state of therapists, we are not staying in this career for very long. There's some really interesting data actually from the Herd Financial State of the Therapist's Private Practice. I can't remember the title. It's all of those words, probably in a different order. Yeah. But, there's a very large majority of therapists that are within the first 10 years of their career. And then if you look to 15 and 20 years, it just drops right off. Like therapists are not hanging around. And that is so sad. Like this is such a disservice. Our communities need us so much. That people need healing and a space to just be. And we are burning and churning through some of the most talented therapists. And there aren't even enough therapists in the first place. And the ones that are here that have made it through that are good, trained clinicians, like we need them around as long as they want to be here. And they deserve to have the most beautiful, joy-filled, authentic lives that they can have inside of work and outside of work.
Do you feel like if a therapist maybe is listening and is thinking, well, I don't really feel like this is me, or I don't really feel like I'm, on this expressway to burnout, is there maybe a couple check-ins that they can do with themselves, or even questions that they can take to their own therapist to maybe check in with themselves about like, am I truly marked safe from this right now? Or am I doing things to help to sustain myself right now?
Even if we're not on that path today, our life is always changing. We may be in a different season of our life, very soon, and continuing to check in with ourselves about how am I feeling? How am I doing? How is my body responding to this work? What's going really well? Where am I getting enough support? Where am I not getting enough support? Is it truly the work, that may be burning me out or that I'm having a problem with? Or is it that I don't feel like I have enough community? Am I doing too much because I'm afraid that like somebody else won't be able to handle it? Maybe I can do all these things when it's just me, but if I start dating and have a partner and I want to be somewhere else at like 6:30 p.m., maybe I have to reevaluate these things. Or maybe if I start having a kiddo or I start adopting a ton of dot, right? Like whatever your situation is, as your life changes, coming back to this question of like, how am I listening to my body? What is my nervous system trying to tell me about this work that I'm doing? And I think that just takes a lot of flexing that muscle of listening to the whispers that your body gives you versus waiting for it to scream at you. And like you said, it's so much easier to make these shifts and changes in your life earlier rather than later. And not that like if we get far down the road, absolutely we can change it. It might be a little bit harder, but we want to give ourselves as many, choices and options as possible. And the goal is never to just tolerate life or tolerate burnout, but just to live and live beautifully and authentically and, be a whole person outside of work.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point too, kind of what you were alluding to of like the practice that you start with in the season of life that you start with does not have to be the practice that you end with. I mean, I know even in my almost 7 years, the practice that I started with, I was pregnant and I had no children. And now I have 2 young children and my practice is very different than what I started with. And it was able to grow and meld and change with me as I went through those seasons of life because I needed it to. It really wasn't negotiable. It could not remain the same. It had to move and shift with me. And I think that some folks are afraid of doing that because, are they going to churn through clients? Probably. You might lose a few clients if you change your schedule, but you're going to fill those slots again. Are they going to, feel the wrath of changing their niche or their specialty because they're just not feeling that's their niche or specialty anymore? Sure, you might. But then the other side of it is you're going to be fulfilled and you're going to have this longevity and you're going to have this sustainability. But again, in the eye of the storm, it's hard to pick our head up and be like, oh yeah, there is this really positive change at the end of all of this.
To me, this is again why community is so important and practicing that community care, talking to other people about what you're feeling and asking them questions like, how did you handle this problem? How did you solve, this issue? What do you know that you think I don't know yet? And that you don't have to recreate the wheel every time there's a problem. Like so many therapists have done this before you. So many therapists will do it after you. Sharing resources, right? Like sharing, this is the best person to ask for this. This is the best book, in the community. This is the best person to refer to. Like having that support. Yeah, things are going to be hard. Life is hard. We've already been through really hard things, but having that support makes it more tolerable, right? Make sure that we don't have to sit through that eye of the storm by ourselves.
Yeah. And I think even that support can sometimes provide that validation of, oh yeah, this is not a good situation that you're in right now, because we're so good at convincing ourselves like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's going to be fine. And I think to have somebody who's also in our field, and especially, if we're both in agency work or we're both in private practice, to be like, no, this actually isn't fine at all. Like, we need to make a change.
Again, this is an epidemic. It's a system-wide problem this is not a problem that Aubrey owns and that Aubrey just needs to work harder to solve. That's not true.
How do you help to alleviate that responsibility off of therapists? Because I think that we've kind of talked about as therapists, we're so other focused and we just want to help. And I think it's hard for us to take stock in that and believe in that piece. What would you say to people about that?
I would still say go and build your community. I want that community to be filled with therapists who get it, that you don't have to explain it to. And I also want there to be folks who know absolutely nothing about therapy, who can give you that really honest feedback of like, why are you doing that? Right? Like if you have a friend who works in finance or works at a law firm, they would never be like, yeah, waive that late cancellation fee, right? They'd be like, what are you doing? Charge it now, right? So having that perspective from both sides, I think is so wonderful in being able to navigate the gray space and all those really tough moments.
Where do you recommend that therapists start to find that community? I know a lot of therapists are very steered away from like the online communities.
So I would never.
I'm trying to be so graceful about it, but people are scared and I don't blame them.
Yeah, I actually don't. With my own friends and clients, I'm like, look, if it is a free and open page, the answer is no. Like, don't do it.
Advice.
Like, there has to be some sort of thing bringing you together. There has to be some sort of like shared value, shared purpose, shared goal. And DFW, or Greater Atlanta, that's not a shared goal or a mutual anything. So I would really say that network in your community. And when you find someone that you know and you like, I want you to ask them, who do you know that you think I should also know?
Love that question.
Is there someone that you can introduce me to, that you think I would get along with? And again, finding community in fun things too, right? Like not just work things. Like again, you're a whole person. Finding consultation groups, finding supervision groups, business groups, right? Like people who are also small business owners and entrepreneurs who maybe are also therapists and maybe not therapists. I think those are really beautiful places to start. I think you can also find great community in volunteering. I think you can find it in your neighborhoods. I think you can find it sometimes online. I will be totally honest with you. I think online you're going to find it behind a paywall. Like, I think those are the best communities, is the people that are invested enough in that shared purpose. There's some fantastic like paid communities out there. And I think that's honestly the difference.
I completely agree. And that's why I had always said from day one that I will never have a Facebook community. Mine has always been behind a very small nominal paywall, because the difference in how people show up in those spaces is night and day. I mean, it could be as small as a $5 or $10 paywall, but people are not going to pay that to go in and be mean and to be degrading. And it is such a highly supportive and like shared goal and just really productive place to be. So I totally agree with that sentiment, hands down. And then the other thing that you mentioned with the reaching out to different therapists and therapist groups and even the small business ones, I love to tell people that are going into those that are like, I have social anxiety, I'm introverted, I'm scared, like, be professional, but be a friend. Like, it's okay to go into those, like, remain professional. You are representing your brand and your practice, but people just want to have friendly conversation and they just want a friend out of these relationships, just like we do going into that. We want this professional connection, but at the root of the connection is friendship and being friendly. And so I think when we break down this, you have to connect, have this professional connection. Like, no, you need to go and just be friendly with this person and talk about your shared interests and talk about, the shared modalities that you're using, your specialties that you have. And it will kind of grow from there if it's a right relationship for you.
And I think that, therapists, we are so good at building relationships. Like, when we sit in a therapy room, like, that's what we're doing. We're building trust and rapport. But for some reason, if we like leave our office, therapists are like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to make a friend anymore. And you're like, yes, you do. You are actually so good at this. Go into these spaces and build rapport. Like, you have incredible listening skills. You know how to ask really interesting questions. Like, again, you're probably a really cool person, like, if you're in this field. So like, go out and do that. And I think there's something to be said about finding the right environments too. Like, I have just not really been into going to these networking events where you go into a coffee shop and like sit across from one another, like an eyeball to eyeball for an hour and have to like have small talk. Like, that's not fun or interesting to me anymore. I really like these events that are more like, let's get together and talk about a book that is therapy related or not therapy related. Or I'm going to one on Friday that's like a shop and talk. And I'm like, heck yeah, I want to shop and talk. Like, these are two of my favorite things. Like, I think those are more fun too, because there's something else to talk about besides just, hi, my name's Aubrey. And like, this is what I do. And again, just like you would talk to your own clients about, like, if you're going to like a family dinner that's going to be weird, you don't just sit there. You have something to do. You assign people roles, right? Like, you bring this dish, you help clean up, you do this, and then we'll play a game afterwards, right? And those are, I think, way more fun and authentic. And that's when your best self comes out, right? When you're doing things that you like to do. So, I'm probably going to find really interesting people that I connect with at a shop and talk, because I'm the kind of person that would go to a shop and talk. Whereas like one of my dear friends who's a therapist, she would never. Like, that's just not her personality.
Yeah.
But she finds different therapists than I find. And then we can kind of go back and forth of like, I vouch for these folks and like she vouches for these, more introverted types. And like, that's what it's about. You're not supposed to meet every person, and you're not supposed to be the therapist for every person either.
Yeah, totally. And also, obviously depending where you are in your capacity and burnout, but if you're not finding the event that speaks to you, create it. Like, I have a therapist who went through my program. As soon as she finished, she created a walk and talk with therapists at like a state park. And it started with just one of her friends who's a therapist. And then they invited somebody, and then she met somebody and invited them. And now it's like a huge blossoming group. And it's like, it only needs to start with one person. And then that person is going to say, this was actually really fun. I actually have somebody in mind who would also love this. And then before you know it, you have this group, like you're saying, of like-minded people who love being in nature, love walking, love talking in like a low stakes way about their career and their practice and what goes along with their specialty and the population they're serving. And like, that is your way to create that community for yourself in such a low lift way. Like you're just going for a walk with a friend, you know?
Absolutely. I love it. I think people are so interesting and creative.
Yeah.
And if given enough time and space, we'll come up with some of the coolest things. And I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah. Truly. Take my money. Put a paywall behind it. Take my money. It's fine. Please. I respect the time it takes to organize these things. Charge me.
Please, I am happy to pay you for your time and expertise because I know what went into that. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you did it because I don't want to. So like, here, run that card.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. So let's see. If a therapist is maybe in the other end of the spectrum, so they are deep in the burnout and, don't have the capacity to create this community and really are just feeling like they really are lacking like time and resources to do anything. What is something that you would recommend as a starting point for them?
I have someone who is like crispy burned. I'm a marshmallow that's been left in the fire for too long, burned out. I want you to pick one thing to do. What is one thing that is going to make your life 1% easier?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that is simply like capping the number of sessions you do a day. And I'm not saying, and then reschedule everyone. I'm just saying like, cool, we're going to decide the limit is 6, right? Or the limit is 8 instead of being like, oh, the limit does not exist. Let's just pick one or putting those blocks on your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite one is whatever you're doing, double the time that it's going to take.
Love that.
So if you say, oh, like it's only going to take me 10 minutes to do my notes. No, it's not. Put it down for 20 and then just be thankful for the gift of time if you do get it done in 10. Get 1% better is all we're looking for. And if we have a little bit of extra capacity, I would say reach out to someone and tell them how you're really feeling and what's going on, right? Like reach out and try to get some sort of community, even if it's just one person, if that's your partner, if it's your best friend, so that you are not trying to figure this out all by yourself.
And it doesn't mean you're failing as a therapist because you're going through a time where you're struggling. I think that prevents a lot of people from being vulnerable because we feel like we have to have it all figured out. But like you said, it's completely different parts of ourselves. Like we can still be the toasted marshmallow in the fire and completely burn to our capacity and also still be a really great therapist, but we shouldn't have to do both at the expense of ourselves.
We were never supposed to figure this life out by ourselves. Right? As therapists, we know we heal in relationships, right? And we were never supposed to be like, wow, I'm burned out and I have to fix it by myself. Like, no, you were always supposed to have people to support you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've heard that you have some freebies for people. Where can they find them?
I do. You can find them on my website, www.sageholisticcounseling, sage like the herb, SAGE, holisticcounseling.com/freebie. And you don't even have to give me your email address if you don't want to. You just click on the link and I have a checklist to see if you are the one who is doing the most. I have a fun little checklist for burnout. Then I also have a community care map with a list of my favorite ways to get some community care and make life a little bit easier.
I love that. I hope that people take you up on those because very well needed.
Me too. I think they're really pretty and really great. So I would love if other people had that thought too.
Oh my gosh, Aubrey, I love it. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I feel like we could have chatted all day.
Thank you so much for having me and for responding to my cold email.
Of course. Of course. I love that you sent it. I'm so glad. This was such a beautiful conversation. And I know that it's definitely going to help the folks that are listening.
Thank you.
All right. Before we close out today, I want to make sure that you know about the 2 ways that I can support you beyond this podcast. If you're in that early stage thinking about launching or just getting started, the Complete Launch Kit was built for exactly where you are. It's a step-by-step course with 65 lessons that walks you through everything: forming your LLC, setting your rates, getting your systems in place, building your marketing foundation, and seeing your first client without piecing it together from Google and Reddit threads. And I added 2 things this year that make it even more of a no-brainer. It now comes with a Squarespace website template, which is a $750 value. So you're not starting from a blank page. And the Sidekick is built right in. So you can ask questions or brainstorm as you go instead of getting stuck and losing momentum. Everything you need in the right order, with your website and your own assistant already handed to you. And if you're already in practice, but your marketing feels inconsistent or honestly non-existent, that is what the HQ community is for. It's a done-for-you marketing system designed specifically for private practice therapists. Every week you get a marketing drop, 5 social media posts, 2 blog post titles and templates, and a community outreach idea with its own template, all strategically built so your time goes towards the tasks that actually bring in new clients, not just busy work. There's also a library of hours of expert trainings, and I'll personally review your website and directory profiles and send you feedback anytime you want. You also get your very own Sidekick, an AI tool built specifically for private practice marketing that can turn a prompt into a polished caption, blog post, or newsletter in minutes, all of that for $37 a month. And as always, if this was helpful for you, I would love it if you could leave a comment, subscribe, and share this with a therapist who also needs a weekly private practice pep talk. It is one of the best ways to get this in the hands of therapists who need it most. That's all for this week, and I will see you in the next one.